Humble, grounded means I'm confident enough in myself that I can express my opinion, but I'm also open to listening to your opinion and seeing if there's a better way or a way we can do it.
Yeah, it's amazing. This week on the SaaS Sales Performance Podcast, we're thrilled to welcome Jamie Lee. Jamie is a seasoned revenue leader with over 25 years of sales and go-to-market experience. Most recently was Chief Revenue Officer at Zesty, and Jamie's career spans multiple CRO roles, numerous GTM leadership positions, making him a strategic voice on how to harness technology, data, and also team dynamics, which we speak about so often on this podcast, to drive sustainable growth. So in this episode, we're going to be diving deeper into some of the lessons learned and golden nuggets from navigating transformation. And we're going to spend quite a bit of time unpicking what high-performing sales people are looking for in their roles, but also what leaders can do to practically enable that change. So tune into the episode to hear Jamie's discussion, and I'm really looking forward to sharing these insights with the ecosystem. Jamie, huge welcome onto the show. Thanks for taking the
Thank
time
you.
to join me today.
Yeah, Matt, no, great to be here. I'm glad we got connected.
Awesome. Yeah, Jamie, you and I were having coffee a couple of weeks ago in the Bay Area and just catching up on some of the stuff that we're seeing in the marketplace. I think what's super interesting is that you've sat on multiple sides of the fence, right? You know, you've led the VC journey, you've also led private equity. It's a pretty wild time out there at the moment, right? For revenue leaders everywhere. You know, I'm hearing a lot
Yeah.
of challenges and kind of struggling to keep up with the pace of change.
Yeah, no, for sure. Maybe a little bit on my background. But
That'd
yeah,
be great.
I 25 years here in Silicon Valley. Basically started my tech career at Cisco, spent about 6 years there, then moved over to NetApp. I quickly got into management there, was a first line manager for a couple of years. And then the last 3 or 4 years, I was a second line manager, managing primarily the Bay Area up through the Pacific Northwest, commercial, mid-sized enterprise accounts. After about 6 years at NetApp, left and went over to another data storage company, Repar. Great technology, probably not as well known as the culture at Cisco and NetApp. And it was a good experience for me to recognize that, culture plays a big part in where you're trying to go as an organization. But the technology was great. And we got in some right people, did some right things, and really started to make a big impact in the market. Got bought by HP. I spent a couple of years at HP running their global accounts for the storage team. Great learning experience. 300,000 person company for me, it was not for me at the time, so looked to
It's
do
not
something
small.
different. And there's quite a bit of challenges, but some good smart people that were there and I met there and still stay in contact with. And then left and went to work for a system integrator, Intervision, some partner of ours that we had worked with at NetApp, for many years, and so knew them well. The CEO and I together and decided we were going to kind of build a new organization and transform it from a system integrator to what we call the strategic service provider. We did that we bought the two owners out, and then we raised money through private equity, as you mentioned, and Huron Capital, a company out of the Midwest, great folks to work with. And we went on a little bit of an acquisition spree. So I led the kind of the pre-go-to-market and post of eventually 8 acquisitions, pulled them in together into the strategic service provider, had a nice fun run, grew those revenues about 300%. And then after leaving there, decided I want to get back onto the VC side, and then was at Zesty, as you mentioned. And that's a cloud optimization platform. And we were focused really on kind of that cloud waste that everybody talks about that's still very prominent, kind of the topic of how do we streamline that business? How do we make it more efficient? And we did it in a multitude of ways. And, it's kind of my career there in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's amazing. Amazing journeys. We were obviously talking about the state of the market today, and we're talking about it feels like unless you're in that kind of small cohort of AI companies that are scaling faster than anything we've ever seen in the Bay Area, it feels like everyone else is undergoing some kind of transformation and trying to figure out how they rethink their team, their go-to-market strategy, and how they can try to emulate some of the growth that's happening in the AI world, right? There was 3 things you mentioned just a moment ago from a sales rep's perspective they're looking for, right? And you spoke about the kind of number 1, coaching and development, number 2, trust, and number 3, clear communication.
Yeah. Yeah, this is what I think reps are looking for, and this is backed up by I think it was Gartner or Salesforce and maybe somebody else that put it together. It doesn't surprise me when you are very in tune with what sales reps are trying to get done, right? There many sales reps, whether they're new, the newer generations probably got a little head start. But if you've been doing this for 10 years, 15 years, or dare I say, 20 years, a lot of these tools are new. And there's a lot of buzz in the market. There's a lot of them that are extremely helpful. You truly have to have a growth mindset going into it, that it's you're going to learn and you're going to spend time on it. I personally watch tons and tons of podcasts, read a lot just to kind of see through the noise. We implemented a fair amount of different stuff in our at Zesty, because it's all about becoming more efficient in what we do. And if you as a sales leader, it's kind of like if you're the lead horse, the lead horse, everybody's following, right? How fast you run, everybody else runs. So if you're understanding that development and you're helping sales reps by learning it yourself, they're going to follow that lead. But you've got to make sure that you're fully digesting what it is, because they're trying to get a hold of it and they're scared just as much as anybody else, and trying to make sure that they're at the top of their game. So you got to lead from the front. You got to make sure that you're understanding what some of their challenges are, because they're probably intimidated, they're probably scared, and most of it is just scared because of the unknown. Right. And I don't know what I should know and where I should go and what tool I should use. At the core of it, I think selling is still selling. But I think if you are not in tune with what the sales reps are doing, they're going to jump to that next exciting opportunity and completely doing development and spending time with them and getting in the trenches with them.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Because I saw a post this morning on LinkedIn from Harry Stebbings, a fellow Brit who's running AVC, and his LinkedIn post, which had gotten a load of traction, was that if you have members on your team who are refusing to embrace AI, then you should get them off your team. What do you do if you've got, say, a more tenured salesperson on your team whose performance levels are okay, they're maybe not the highest performer, but they're just kind of straight up refusing to embrace new ways of working? Like, how do you handle that situation?
Yeah. I mean, I think it kind of comes back a little bit to the basics of, a little bit of what we've talked about, which is I truly believe you got to know on a regular basis what it is what they're looking to do, what's motivating them, what's inspiring them, what's aspiring, how do you aspire them to the right direction. And you can't, once you understand that, I think you can then start to look to say, what is your inhibition about trying something new? Is it because you have a fixed mindset, right? A fixed mindset is I'm at a certain level, and if I try anything new, I may fail. Therefore, I'll never try anything new. If you have a complete fixed mindset, I don't think, hopefully the AI tool paradigm or quagmire didn't highlight that to you. Hopefully you've already understood that prior, because usually a growth mindset will see through that. And that's why hiring is so important up front, and not only hiring, but continuing to maintain that conversation with them as you go through their journey. But let's say they woke up one day and had a fixed mindset, because it can happen, and said this AI tools are just not for them. I think you have to sit down with them, try to explain where it's going, understand what's holding them back. What are your challenges to get there? Are there things in your job today? Like, I don't know of anybody that likes to update their CRM. I don't know of anyone that does that. If that's holding you back from meeting customers, and I can help you with that process, and that frees you up to go do something else, would that not benefit you? If the answer is no, that wouldn't, then that means you don't want to spend more time with customers. Then we got a bigger problem. If it's I don't understand it and I'm just afraid to raise my hand and learn a little bit more, all right, let's put a short leash and see if we can get you there. But most importantly is I need you to go first and lean in on that growth mindset and show me some research. I like to give people some action items to do. So it's like you come in prepared and show me the research you've done, no different than I would do with a customer to show how much you're engaged. And if I ask you to do that, Matt, and you show up at our next meeting and you've done no research and you've done no thought process, or you have no things that none of the things that we talked about, that's a clear indication to me that, maybe it's time to go look to do something different that does motivate you, that does get you out of bed, that does get you excited. That's kind of how I'd handle. So that's what I mean by a bit of the basics, right? Like a bit of the basics is knowing where people are going, what motivates them, why they want to go there, what excites them, knowing what's in their way. How can I help get things out of your way? What's holding you back from adopting it? And if there's things in there we can solve, great. If there are, but again, short leash, right? Because if I'm not going to spend the next 6 months doing this, but in the next 30 days or next 2 weeks or the next week, you can show me that you're willing to lean in and try to figure this out because you have a reputation of being a great performer in the past, then I would be, that would be the path I would take. But at the end of the day, the three things I look for are hungry, humble, smart, right? Do you have the drive? Do you have the humility to learn? And do you have that self-awareness and the EQ? And if you don't have any of those three, it's going to be a challenge for us to get to the places we need to go together.
There's some amazing tips in there. So I'd love to come on to hiring in a moment. You said something that was really interesting there, Jamie, about going back to the basics and assigning tasks in, say, one-to-ones, and then monitoring if the follow-through is being carried out by the team member. I think that's so interesting because you talk about the latest research and sales reps are saying that they want coaching and development. But I'm also hearing pushback from revenue leaders in the market who are saying, well, the team are saying that. It's like they're kind of doing lip service to it. But then the actual behavior is not there. They're not embracing coaching. They're not driving their own development. So I think that's a great tip that you shared is the growth mindset actually there, or is it just some noise?
Yeah. No, I think I think there's a lot of research you can do around simple questions you can ask to show that growth mindset, right? I start out by, I think I've given the book Mindset by Carol Dweck to probably, I don't know, not counting what and giving it to everybody to sales kickoff, probably hundreds of people, family members, friends, everything, because once you see what it truly means, and I think it gets overused and nobody goes below it, but once you start to understand it, so it's like, go read this book and then come back and let's talk about it. I do that even before we start working together, because I just want to see if when you come out of that, did you A, go read it? B, did it have a meaningful impact on you? Because look, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've had a fixed mindset on certain things myself many times. And you do go in and out. It's not one or the other. But it's, do you recognize it? And then can you go say, okay, I'm going to go work on developing this, and I'm not afraid to go try something, because it's about the process, not the end result. And if you have that culture, but it starts with the hiring process, it starts with the evaluations, ongoing evaluations, and I think it starts with giving them the concepts behind it, not just using the words, right? And so you've got to dig a little deeper. But I can tell you, Matt, when I talk to most revenue leaders, no matter what no matter, many of them will say to me that they focus on all this. And then if you go talk to their reps, they don't have any conversation with their manager that's not about a deal, a forecast, or something that tactically they need. And so we have to challenge ourselves as revenue leaders and challenge our sales teams. Don't be, set aside time for a 30-minute conversation that's about where are you trying to go and what you're trying to do. And I think that then instills the growth mindset, because otherwise it's just words. Otherwise it's just saying, it's like the culture lines or the values and mission statements. If they're so complex or only on a website and you're not living them, they're not really your values. So you have to embrace it. You have to incorporate it through the sales process. Otherwise, you are going to get stuck. And you do get stuck. Nobody hires perfect, right? But I always say a good leader, for the most part, should be able to run through the process well enough that the recipient comes to their own conclusion that maybe they're not in the right place, right? It shouldn't be me telling you. You should say, you know what, Jamie, as we work together, I recognized here that there's a lot of learning and development. There's a lot of gray area. It's not all perfectly situated like my last company. I learned I've got to lean into the process. I've got to constantly be talking with others and A/B testing and trying stuff. That's okay too. There's a lot of companies where you can come in and just sit and it's pretty prescriptive, right? So a good leader should be able to take that subordinate to a direction where the realization is on their own that, I'm not ready for this, versus just walking in one day and saying, hey, you're not cut out. Like, that's good coaching and leadership, is if we're going on that path together. As one of my former mentors says is, all surprises are bad, right? All surprises are bad. There should be no surprise. You shouldn't walk into a meeting and say, hey, Matt, this isn't going well. You're not doing a good job in learning and development, because what are you talking about? There should be no surprise. So I think the challenge is not about as much the sales people when the post you're referring to. Yes, yeah. Or they've got to be aggressively trying to learn. But I'll argue the bigger challenge is with the sales leaders.
Yeah. And Jamie, we're hearing this time and again from the market. Like, we recently looked at some UHub's data. By far and away, the number one reason that frontline leaders are giving as an obstacle to coaching their teams is not enough time. So I think one of the things we see lots of sort of CROs trying to work out is like, is that an excuse that's been used because they either don't feel confident in coaching their teams from a skill perspective, or is there actual interference?
I don't like to speak in generalities and say it every all, because you just, there's definitely, I think it's an excuse, candidly. And the reason I say that is, if I have 5 AVPs and the top AVP does the coaching, guiding, and also does all the numbers and does all the meetings, I've got a data set that tells me that is it's doable. And then I've got another person that's middle of the road and they don't have time for the coaching and guiding. So I'm not sure. I don't think if you're in Seattle, the customer base is that different from Austin that, one person has less time. I mean, there's still the same amount of time in the day. So I think
Yeah.
it's a bit of an excuse. But at the core of it, I fundamentally believe it's a lack of training, kind of to the other piece you said. I think I was a good sales rep. I got promoted. I'm a hard driver. I work my butt off. I get out there, I get after it. I drive the team. I take them out. We social. We're good. All those aspects are great. That's that super rep mentality. But, the difference I like to ask people, and I ask the leaders themselves, I say, how much time do you spend in the business and how much time do you spend on the business? And the people over here, my hands in the video, that say I have no time, they're all in the business. And the person over here, ironically, on 9 times out of 10, are doing better on performance, doing better on all metrics, who have time, actually carve out time to work on the business. Maybe I said those reverse, but work on the
Yeah.
business versus just in. So yes, an excuse. Training is a big part of it. And also the type of reps you're hiring and they're hiring. You can probably pick which one these leaders hire. This leader doesn't ask any question about humility, self-awareness. This leader asks all about how hard you work, percent to quota, how did you hit your numbers, what counts. That's what they look for. This person wants those questions too, but tell me about a time you missed quota.
Yeah.
Tell me about a time you failed. What did you do about it? I'm listening for did they take responsibility? Did they talk about what they could do? Growth mindset, right? Did I do it better? Those aspects are there. So I don't think it's complicated. I mean, it is in a degree, but there's a lot of the scientific side is that it's how you hire, how you spend your time, training, and just organization, time organization.
It's great stuff, Jamie. I'll ask you a quick question. I mean, if I'm a frontline leader and I'm currently spending too much time in the business and the only time I'm spending with my reps is deal coaching, figuring out pipeline reviews, how we move deals forward, I'm spending time on all of those operational in the business type activities you just spoke about. What would you advise if I'm a manager who's too in the business? What's kind of one thing that you'd encourage that group of managers to focus their own upskilling and growth on so that they can move to being more strategic, more on the business and building a team?
One thing that was super valuable for me, and I implemented it at Zesty, and it was just starting the process, is truly looking at putting OKRs together. Anybody out there, you can just go, like John Doerr gives a great talk on OKRs and KPIs. But the OKRs are like, what are our big themes? And I think it's very critical. Get your team together, go take a day offsite, go to another building, whatever, just get out of your day-to-day activity and look with your team and say, what do we want to achieve? What is our aspirational 3 goals? And then build with them what are the KPIs we're going to, key performance indicators we're going to look at to get to those. And then what are the actions we're going to take? So what are the inputs and outputs, right, that we're going to take? You're going to be clumsy at first if you don't have a diagram how to do it, but it's not difficult. The difficult thing is to do it the first time and write it up. What I find when you start doing that is that first line leader has to then articulate how each of those actions are going to drive to that overall goal. And when you bring your team together and your team sits in that room with you and you force them to put their laptop down on their phone and you say, this isn't just about you, this is about all of us, because tides rise all boats, right? And we're going to get more resources and we're going to get more SEs and we're going to get more if we do better as an organization. So it's not just about you, Matt, being at 140%. It's about Jamie, Sally, Fred also getting to 100 and 120 because more resources, blah, 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 right? So that's what's in it for them. Now we build it together. As they're viewing that, they start thinking about elements that maybe they don't have. And maybe the element is we don't do enough role plays. We don't do enough in our QBRs, you do them individually, and I don't get to see the other what's working for them. We as a sales team are going to do a best practice. So you're getting them in the boat with you to drive to the bigger goal of what that number is that we want to go hit, to be the number one sales region in the company. Okay, well, how are we going to get there, guys? What are the 4 elements we need to do? We need to grab so many new logos. We need to, work so many channel partners. We need to, and then, okay, now if we're going to go do all that, what are the elements we need to do below it? I found that when I get everybody in the boat together and they all build towards it, and we all have agreement that if we do these 5 things, this will achieve our number one goal, I get a lot more people nodding heads in excitement. I have heard, and I think it's wrong that OKRs are perceived to be only at the executive level. I think that the executive team should start them and buy into them and transcend them down to the teams. But I think true sales leaders going somewhere, and I've seen a ton of them, and I know a ton of them that, worked with me, for me, that are in key positions. These are the things they did with their organization so that they had then time to look at their diagram of their on the business. And now they're looking at the elements that they may be doing right or maybe do miss. And you may not hit them all, but you have red, yellow, green, and then you start working and adjusting to them. That is one way that I would prescribe to show how this is a team sport and how you're going to achieve those goals better together. And I'll guarantee you, maybe somebody will prove me wrong, but I'll guarantee you that there'll be a learning and development and enablement will be in there, and it'll be a top one that needs to be done. And when you get your team telling you that that's the top thing, and you have your one lone wolf that doesn't want to do it, like we were talking about earlier, that lone wolf either sets themselves apart or that lone wolf gets back with the pack and kind of leans in and starts to figure it out. But you get your answers pretty quick. Now you came up with it as the sales team of what we're going to go do, and it wasn't coming from the top down, just making you go do all these things that you see no benefit in.
It makes so much sense to me. And also I love thinking more in terms of OKRs or whichever goal setting leadership framework you choose. You're thinking immediately, as you talked us through that, about the inputs that are going to drive the outcome, right? So you're immediately thinking about what inputs and work you need to do with the team to get them up to a level to hit the overall goal. I love that. And I also cannot recall a single conversation I've had this year, maybe ever, with a frontline manager who's talked about OKRs. Like you said, it tends to be that kind of executive goal setting exercise. So it makes me wonder whether there's something for the exec team to take away from this as well, that there needs to be much better transcendence down.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Matt, sorry to cut you off, but one thing I'll tell you is sales leaders will say, they don't call it an OKR because it's what they do is they put up their goals. I want to be the number one region. So all that's fine. That could be part of it. It's the layer below in the inputs, outputs that we're talking about and the actions that usually get forgotten. So just to add on to what you were saying, I don't need to just know your goals. I want to know what are the steps you're going to do to get there. Yeah. And did you do this on your own? Or did you do this with your team? Oh, myself and my SE manager, my RevOps person did this. All right, well, did you share it with the team? Because I'll tell you this, you'll get 100% better consensus if they built it with you than if you showed it to them. Chances are you probably never even showed it to them. You just presented it to your leaders. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's all about you. If it says, I want to be the number one region, then, your sales team doesn't buy into that. That doesn't mean anything to me other than that's great for you. And yeah, I hope to get you there because I like you. We're friends. But at the end of the day, I don't know if what I'm waking up and doing is contributing to that. Collectively, most people have been on teams where we all collectively want to pick each other up when we are, trying to achieve a common goal. And I'll see if I can find it, but I saw a CEO, and I can't remember the company's name, but he said one question somebody asked him was, what would you have done different, that you've learned? And he mentioned, I wish I had implemented OKRs and KPIs to the organization much earlier in our evolution.
Makes complete sense. Some immediate great takeaways there to go away and think about. So OKRs and goal setting, thinking more about inputs and empowering your team. You also spoke about hiring as another thing that's crucial. And what you alluded to was that it's probably the case that those in the business leaders who are focusing only on the outcome, probably not going to be hiring as good a caliber or profile as the on the business, more strategic leaders. You spoke about 3 things, Jamie, that you focus on when it comes to hiring. Was it humble, hungry, and smart? Just walk us through, if you will, like how do you go about assessing candidates through those 3 lenses?
Yeah, so I didn't come up with this. I stole this from Pat Lencioni. Many of you know him, have read the five dysfunctions of a company, right? At the top of that pyramid is trust. So when his company set out to figure out, he was getting a lot of, over the 15, 20 years, a lot of requests to understand what makes a great team. And so his organization went out and did a lot of work and surveys and questions and interviews. And they came out with these three principles that they believe are must be inherent in the team member and the team to be able to be successful. And you cannot be missing one of these. You can have the strength over one over the other. That's okay. But you have to be proficient in all three. And those three are hungry, humble, smart, and I'll break them down. Hungry is your drive, right? That a lot of the questions relate around that of like, I don't believe you're born with the hunger. I think you get it when you're young. Give me examples of where you've gone out and had to find things and move things. Salespeople love answering this one because it's what they've been taught is the main thing. That one, it has more complexity to that, but for the sake of making it simple, we'll say that. The second is humility. And I'd argue this is probably much more important, but they're all equally, all three are important, but one, I put it above. And humility, the root word of humble basically means grounded. And a lot of people think of humility as just deference, right? Like, okay, I'm not going to speak. It actually is not even the same. It's humble, grounded means I'm confident enough in myself that I can express my opinion, but I'm also open to listening to your opinion and seeing if there's a better way or a way we can do it. Okay, so humility at the end of the day is core to what salespeople and sales you should be doing, but it's also core to what a good person should be. It's not your way or the highway. It's my way of listening. I understand it, but I'm also not going to just never speak up. I'm going to talk. And then the third one is what gets people the most confused because they think of smart as intellect and IQ, and it's really EQ. And so the EQ part of this is the self-awareness. And I've talked to some revenue leader friends of mine that have said they think self-awareness is one of the top level things that people need. And I'm like, well, it's kind of cool because we're talking about you absolutely need drive. You got to have crazy drive. You have to have crazy humility, and then you have to have crazy self-awareness. And self-awareness is one of like, can I read the room? Can I read the customer? Can I read when somebody's not paying attention? Am I aware that I dominate the sales meeting the entire time and listen to nobody? Am I aware that I'm the last person to join the meeting every time and everybody has to wait for me? Or the self-awareness is where a lot of people fall off, and they don't have that EQ ability, and so then they don't adapt very well. Those three, there's a lot of cool exercises that Anita that I introduced you to that we used to do where we'd have people self-rank themselves, and then we'd have our peers self-rank. So you can do it in a team, as first line team, you can do it in your leadership team. And then, Jamie, we think, your humility is stronger than your drive, and and they're like 1.2 and 1.3, like, it's all still there. The big question is you can't not have one. Somebody says, oh, they have crazy drive. Yeah, I guess they'll listen to you, but they come into the meetings and they're clueless. They're super loud. They take the phone call during sales kickoff. They don't pay attention. If you were missing one of those aspects, the ideal team player, it's a whole book written about this, is not going to function. And that's where you have to grade yourself and rate them. And again, you stack rank them on purpose, but you can't be missing one of those. I do that in the hiring process. We do that in the review process. I like to do it back on a 360 view, or have you give it back to me where I rank. I actually do it even with my kids and their friends. Very interesting listening to them talk about some of their sports teammates. Oh, they work so hard, but if you get a goal, they never high five you. If they score a goal, they want all the. So I instilled it with them young, much probably to their chagrin, but I think it's super critical to have that humility side, that self-awareness, but at the same time have crazy drives. You can read a lot about it, hungry, humble, smart. And I hear a lot of coaches talk about hungry, humble. They leave out the smart, the EQ part, because it probably doesn't play. They don't think it plays as much. But I think you can't have, the self-awareness is just as critical. Hopefully that helps.
Very helpful, Jamie. And in terms of the new hire assessments, you're then using your interview scorecard or your interview questions to align to each of those three areas. Is that right?
Yeah, you could I think we had about 10 to 15 questions under each category. I gave the very simplified version, but we would ask each member that would go. So I would ask some questions and I'd say, you ask, because I wanted you to come out and give me your assessment on them. And it's amazing. I mean, I would have people go in an interview and say, guy was crazy drive. He's all over it. What did you think of self-awareness? And he's like, not at all. Like I started to look around and was waiting to ask a question and wasn't even picking up the fact that I was trying to get a question in and just kept talking louder and just going through. Well, how does that not translate into how you're going to be with your customers?
Right.
And so we would set out a set of questions, have everybody kind of go through each of those. And then in the reviews, we would do the same things. The one thing that I think is the hardest to teach after the fact is the drive. I just don't believe there's a fixed mindset, right? I do believe that there's a possibility, but a slow possibility that you can teach people to have that hunger and drive if they don't already have it. I think that is that one aspect you have to look for in the beginning, and you have to really understand what it means by that. One of the things, like for instance, with remote working, I would ask people many times about driving into the office, and it's a 30-40 minute drive because I know where they live or something, and yeah, no problem, no problem. And I said, okay, so, a lot of times we might do a meeting on a Friday afternoon, which we never did. But, I just wanted to see if that would be an issue. And they're like, oh, well, Fridays, I don't know. You learn to ask enough questions around it that you come out of there going, this person's drive isn't where we need it to be. But yeah, big fan of it. I incorporate it in everything we do. And it takes a while. Like I had to get the organization doing it like at Zesty, but I eventually got it to a point where the recruiters, even all the way up to the CEO, we would talk about somebody and we'd be driving and we would just all of a sudden say, what do you think of that hire? How would you rank them? And again, Matt, I didn't always get it right. There was some tough, like I thought I got the self-awareness and EQ, and the number of times we're in a meeting and their phone goes off. And it's like one time, okay, right? But 2, 3, 4 times, like it's a little thing means a lot to me.
Yeah.
And if you're just messing those little details up and then suddenly 60 days later, it's even a bigger issue. So you don't get it right, but if you're maniacal about it, you're going to catch it early if you made a mistake, and you're going to catch it early, and then you're going to be able to do something about it. We could get into the statistics of a bad hire, but those are some ways that I work with it, and I think there's a lot of value.
Amazing. Jamie, there's been some really great practical takeaways for the leaders listening to this episode. It's super excited to bring this and share it with the community. And I know you and I have had some good sparring on LinkedIn over the years. Assuming LinkedIn is a good place for people to follow up if they got more questions, they want to reach out, continue the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I fundamentally believe in the give back side of it. So anytime, any questions, any guidance, I would happy to help and answer, because I think we're all in this together. And as I tell many of the sales teams in the past, right, we're one of the few sales professions that doesn't have to go through the rigorous testing every year like a doctor or a lawyer or an architect, as an example. So we got to keep ourselves at a high level, because someday we can get over the impact of, oh, here comes a sales guy, here comes a sales gal, right? The way we do that is we all get better at our craft. And I think if we can do that, then in any way I can help, and believe me, I get a lot of help myself. So happy to help out.
Love the growth mindset, practicing what you preach, Jamie. It's been a pleasure, Jamie. Thanks for coming on the show, and looking forward to catching up soon.
Yeah, you too. Thank you, buddy. Take care.